It's family term. And that's neither coincidental nor inconsequential. God has an unseen family. In fact, it's his original family. The logic is the same as that behind Paul's words in Acts on Mars Hill, the Areopagus, that all humans are indeed God's offspring. God has created a host of non-human divine beings whose domain is, to human eyes, an unseen realm. And because he created them, he claims them as his sons, in the same way you claim your children as your sons and daughters because you played a part in their creation. Now, how that relates to the four living creatures, I don't know, but I would guess that they are somehow incorporated into that. Now, you see what we're looking at here all of a sudden? No. So here's Yahweh, who creates a group of non-human beings that are called divine ones. They are not Yahweh. They are not on par with Yahweh. There is no God like Yahweh. But he created this divine family. And some of them fell. And this is what Paul is referring to about why we wrestle against not flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and cosmic forces. This, I think, is what he's talking about.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
The word Elohim, it can be one, many, thousand, myriads, nothing, two or three.
Elohim is a plural form of the word El.
Which is God, singular God.
Right. But Elohim can be used in a corporate manner or a singular manner.
All right, now what about in Genesis where it says Elohim in creation?
Well,
How would that be? What would that be? Myriad? Two, one, none?
I would think contextually we're talking there about who's going to become named Yahweh, the one true God. But this one true God, remember in Genesis 6 there's that, and the sons of God cohabited with women. Now that gets us off in a big problem too. Is that the line of Seth? Is that some of these angels who cohabited with women, fallen angels?
That's another whole bucket.
That's another whole bucket. There's like 5 options for who the sons of God are. I'm not opposed to that being angels who cohabited with women in a unique wicked sin, and their fate is sealed because of that. But I also understand it might be in the line of Seth at a human level.
That's the easy way out.
It is the easy way out.
Chicken's way out.
There are 2 ways. I'm going with the 2. I can look at the angel. That's supernatural.
It doesn't work that way. Sounds good.
Fred, in Genesis 6, excuse me, verse 2, the sons of God saw the daughters of men were
Genesis
beautiful,
6.
and they married any of them.
Oh, yeah.
How does that use of sons of God apparently being able to sexually interact with female humans tie into this?
Some people would say it doesn't, and therefore they would say that those sons of God are referring to the line of Seth, which would be human beings. Some would call them the Nephilim, which results in this giant, like a Goliath or whatever. And others would say this is actually referring to these demonic, angelic beings who cohabited with women. Because remember, angels can take on human physical form. Right? So, again, we're talking about the unseen realm. We live in the seen realm. But it doesn't mean that the unseen beings can't enter into our realm. And by the way, where did Paul go? He went to the third heaven. That's a different realm. Where am I going when I die? I'm going somewhere with a new body eventually, and that's a different realm. So there is some sort of this going on. Now, again, we don't want to get extreme charismaticism, and we don't want our experience over exposition. This is why people get nervous when they talk about this, because they don't want to be labeled as, oh, you're just a wacky charismatic, or you don't believe what the Bible says, you're just going on your experience. You just want to be touched by an angel, right? Can be and all that stuff. So we're not going there. We're just trying to wrestle a little bit with what Paul said this is real, and the Old Testament seems to indicate a little bit of what that reality looks like. John?
Fred, then the theory that that means the line of Seth caused some problems, because then wouldn't it infer that all humanity came
Yes.
from that line
Right.
after the extinction of the line of Cain?
Right, and that's the problem with that view. So yeah, so you're right, every view has a problem, that's the death knell, I think, to the line of Seth. But some people would say, well, how can angels cohabit with them? That's the death knell. Well, that's when you discuss, when you say that they can't come from one realm to the other, that's our problem. But when you open up the possibility that they can enter into our realm, then that's not a problem. In fact, Jesus, as the second person of the Trinity, entered into our realm. That's what Christmas is. That's the incarnation. You say, well, that's supernatural. Of course it's supernatural. What do you think we're talking about? That's what this is. It's supra, above the natural. Now, so we saw at the end of Job 38, right? We had the sons of the morning, the sons of God, stars of the morning, sons of God. They were there before the creation. But look what happens in the beginning of Job. You're probably more familiar with this. In Job 1, the sons of Elohim, Satan included, according to verse 6, came to present themselves before Yahweh. Interesting. So now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? And Satan answered the Lord, who said, from roaming about on the earth and walking around on it. Interesting.
Human form.
Yahweh has a council meeting, and he calls the Elohim. And Satan is one of them. But where's he been? Not in the council meeting. He got there late. He's down on earth. And then he comes up to the council meeting. He's one of the Elohim. With Yahweh as president of the council. What's interesting, it's interesting that Lord is Yahweh, but Satan refers to him as Elohim. You got Yahweh all over the passage. When the devil is referring to God, has Elohim put a hedge around Job? He doesn't say, has Yahweh done this? He says, has Elohim done this? I think it's a pride deal. I think he's trying to diminish the personhood of Yahweh. He doesn't say that, but that would be the answer as to why this word gets used of Yahweh only by the devil, not by anybody else. But anyway. So in chapter 2, verse 1, again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, where have you come from? And he answered, from roaming around the earth. So, Psalm 29.
Fred, before you get to Psalms, when we look at this book,
The Bible.
no, that particular, we're looking at Job.
Very good. Yeah.
It's an interesting, it's a very interesting set of verses, because the authorship of this assumes that someone is in a trance being fed by God the whole story.
Right.
How do you see that in the world, on earth, actually having occurred?
Well, one, this is why liberals say, well, this is just a story made up by some guy who had too much tequila and just started writing and made folklore, and it sounded nuts.
Whoever it was in a trance. It's
Yeah.
sinful.
So for us, well, for me, as evangelicals, I would say, no, this is probably actually a real guy named Job. It's possible Job stood for something else, but okay. So here's a real person who really lived, who had really bad friends, and remember Job's friends, they kind of mess up. And Job had a wife and kids, and the kids all died, and the animals all died, and everything died but the bad wife. But then he had twice as many kids, twice as many sheep, and whatever. So I think this is an actual story, not a myth. It's not an archetypical, story to give us an idea about evil and suffering. It is a story that gives us about evil and suffering, but it's a real man with a real family with a real situation. And Job, that it happened to, was given the backstory and then wrote it. Right? He experienced it, didn't understand it, and then Yahweh started popping in and saying, well, where were you when I did this, and where were you? I repent in sackcloth and ash. I finally get it. I used to hear about you, but now I see you, and oh my gosh. So yes, he was, whether we call it trance, I mean, I can live with trance, or whether it was just a data dump of information, I can live with that, or whether Yahweh said, sit down, fool, I want to talk with you a little bit, I can live with all that. But it was a divine communication to a person about his life situation and then filling in the story around why and what happened.
The story gets complicated because the challenge is the late arrival of any syllabic and graphic writing. And indeed, long after Genesis and Deuteronomy were actually conceived, there wasn't anyone writing these down at the time. And I'm just trying to get a sense of how early in man's existence, or in Israel's existence, or God's people's existence, would this have actually been written as opposed to verbally transferred from one generation to the next?
So, if Job is the oldest book in the Old Testament, chronology, not first in order, but if it's actually the one that took place first, you got to believe that there was, and we know, there was a complete oral history, oral transmission. Not like us. We forget everything, so we use PDAs, computers, but they were able to remember stuff. That's why it's written the way it is. It's written with literary connecting points so that you could remember it, so you can memorize it. That's why it's got the artisticness to it. The Psalms, the Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, all of it is written with all kinds of literary forms so we can have it memorable. So an oral tradition took place sometime, was passed down, and therefore at what point does it get written? I don't know. We do know it's early. Most people think it's written before Moses writes the Pentateuch. But I don't have much more. Carl Anderson might have more on that.
The fact that you had the Satan and the people that followed him chose, and can we infer that all angels, like men, have the free choice?
Evidently, there was a time when the angelic order had an opportunity to make a choice, and a third fell and followed Lucifer. The real question is, why did Lucifer choose wrong? I mean, he was the anointed cherub. He was made in perfection on the fire mountain of God, and yet his pride was lifted up and he wanted to be like God. Why? Where did that come from? I don't know. Why did he do that? How stupid? I don't know. But he did, and then we're told the third of the angels fell with him. Now, unless you reduce that to a bunch of poetic language, metaphorical language that means nothing, then you're left with, it means everything. There is an actual Yahweh. There is an actual group of Elohim. There was an actual rebellion in heaven, and the consequences on earth created a war. And one day, this is where Paul, I think, is going to eventually go, the church today, in his day and our day, is part of the war to reclaim earth and to proclaim God as sovereign and God as loving and good, and all of that won't be fully fulfilled until the eternal state. The millennial kingdom will restore it partially, and then the new heaven and the new earth will restore it fully, and that's why if you look at Genesis and Revelation 21 and 22, a very tight parallel of a garden and a mountain and a garden and a mountain, and God there and God there. All kinds of stuff connects up. We're in a war. And Paul's just told us, of course you're in a war. This is the war that's taking place. It's against spirit. It's not flesh and blood. Yeah, you got to put up with stupid people down here, but that's not the deal. It's the angelic host behind that. It's not these guys are drinking food for idols. It's the demon behind the idol.
With all that's covered here in the last few minutes, how does this play into an election?
He means not voting election.
Yeah.
2020 election?
We need a lawyer to clarify that. Clarify that, puppy. Square it up. Sovereignty of God, we use the word free will of man. The issue is always, how do we resolve that God is omnipresent, omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful, all, and yet he seems to give man, and in this case, angels, the freedom to choose. The angels got to make a one-time choice, and now that's done. Mankind was offered a choice in the garden. That had eternal consequences. And each human being, today, us, we have choice. And we can suffer the consequences of those choices. So, always the discussion is, well, how do you resolve the sovereignty of God and this thing we call free will, whether it's an angelic host, human host, wherever host. So that's a big question. Some people punt to the middle and say, somehow it's a mystery, and the secret things belong to the Lord, and somehow they are compatible. So it's an antinomy, two apparent things that are contradiction, but they're not. They run down parallel paths, and we won't know until the end. That's probably the most prevalent, well, no, it's not the most prevalent view, but it's a very, very important view held in America. The most prevalent view is Arminianism, which would say God's prevenient grace gave people the opportunity or the ability to choose, and man is not totally fallen, but has the ability to make a choice. Those are the two views that try to resolve it. There's others, but
It almost sounded like you described the Marxist dialectic, where you can believe two opposing things at the same time.
well, no, there you have a thesis and an antithesis.
Yes.
And as you struggle with how do they get resolved, you say, oh, those two resolve in a, right, a new
And
idea. Right? The two are synthesized into some new idea.
of course, in reality, never happens. Can the demons make a different choice and become angels, or is it a one-time deal? They made the wrong choice and they're demons forever.
Well, number one, demons are angels. They're the fallen angels. They're the evil angels as opposed to the divine elect angels. But that's a good question. They made a bad choice. They fell. Can they be redeemed? Well, number one, it doesn't say Jesus died for the angels. He died for mankind. Number two, we don't have any illustration or any evidence that angels get an opportunity, a second chance, or whatever. So the theology of it goes, angels made a one-time decision, and now constitutionally they are locked in those angels are constitutionally locked in a fallen state. Can I prove that from the Bible? No, that's a theological statement. But it is reflective of what we do know. We just don't have that kind of a statement here. So I would say, yeah, they're locked constitutionally, but that's only from what I have. You know, it doesn't say that black and white. So, Psalm 29, near the bottom of page 3. Ascribe to Yahweh, O sons of God. Some would translate that, O heavenly beings, the ESV, or sons of the mighty, the New American Standard. Ascribe to Yahweh, O sons of God. Ascribe to Yahweh glory and strength. Ascribe to Yahweh the glory due his name. Yahweh is above the sons of God. The sons of God are described to Yahweh, the glory due his name. The Elohim, the divine class, is not Yahweh. They are to worship and glorify Yahweh. And by the way, so are we. You wonder what your purpose is? Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. You wonder what worship is and all these worship wars that go on in churches? Worship is not drums and worship is not fog machines, although drums and fog machines are fine, or cymbals or triangles or whatever. Worship is ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Now, how do you do that? That's up to you and your church. But that's what we're supposed to do. We don't want to get the methodology to become more important than the functionality, right? We don't want just the method that we're doing to get in the way of what we're really supposed to be doing, and that is ascribing to Yahweh, Lord, there is no one like you. There is no man, there's no son of man, there's no Elohim, there's no four living creature that touches you. You are distinct. Your attributes are totally different. So the sons of God are not different persons of the triune God, nor are they human beings. Page 4. Elohim can and is used to describe various entities. So we can be talking about Yahweh, but it can be talking about the council of Yahweh, it can be talking about nations, demons, or the angel of Yahweh. So Elohim is an elastic term. It does not automatically mean Yahweh. In fact, it usually doesn't mean Yahweh. In fact, look at some of these passages. The biblical writers say about Yahweh, they never say about another Elohim. The biblical writers speak of Yahweh in a way that declares their belief in his unique and incomparability. Who is like you among the gods, Yahweh? Answer, no one. What God, L, what God is there in the heavens or on the earth who can do according to your works and according to your mighty deeds? No one. O Yahweh, God of Israel, there is no God, there's no Elohim like you in the heavens above or beneath the earth. Totally incompatible. For you, O Yahweh, are most high over all the earth. You are highly exalted above all the Elohim. There is Yahweh, one and only. And there is this divine council, sometimes called angels, sometimes called sons of God, I imagine 4 living creatures, some, whatever they are, that are there. They were there to help in creation. Job wasn't. They were there to help do what Yahweh said. So again, Heisner puts it this way. He says, biblical writers also assign unique qualities to Yahweh. Yahweh is all-powerful, the sovereign king over the other Elohim, the creator of the other members of his host council, and the lone Elohim who deserves worship from the other Elohim. In fact, Nehemiah 9 explicitly declares that Yahweh is unique. There's only one Yahweh. You alone are Yahweh. I mean, this is why Judaism is monotheistic, and this is why they have trouble with you Christians, because of what? You guys are Trinitarian. No, you're tritheistic. You worship 3 gods, and God is one. And we say, God is one. He is one essence, but the description of him is 3 persona. And that's why we haggle theologically.
Do the Jews recognize, is Elohim, it's obviously in the Jewish text, right?
Yeah.
So the references we've been talking about to Genesis, did the Jews recognize that as being both singular, plural, corporate,
Yes.
etc.?
And some Jewish interpreters are going to take Elohim to be the same as Yahweh, but then they have problems in some of these texts. And so some of them recognize the angelic host can be referred to by Elohim. Now, they're not going to look at anything in the New Testament to verify that, but they have to look at some of this and they go, that's a possibility. The Jewish interpreters are like Christian interpreters. This view, this view, this view, this view. Evidence for all of them. You sift through the evidence, you come up with the most compelling evidence, or beyond reasonable doubt, right? And that's what you go with. But not everybody agrees.
Is there an interpretation in the Jewish text by rabbis, group, whatever, that says that God is plural?
Not that I know of. They would take any plurality of Elohim and say that's a corporate solidarity view. Because then they're in trouble.
Right.
Then they're in trouble. Then they can't have monotheism. They definitely hold to that, and they hold us in contempt because of...
So what word is used, Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one? What are the 2 words used in that statement?
I don't know, I'd have to look, but it's very distinctive when Moses has got a problem with who shall I say sent me, Yahweh reveals to him, here's the name. And that then becomes the dominant name when Moses or the Old Testament is trying to clarify Yahweh against anybody, anything else. Okay. So, in the middle there, the biblical use of Elohim, again this is Heisner, is not hard to understand once we know that it isn't about attributes. What all the figures on the list have in common is that they are inhabitants of the spiritual world. In that realm, there is a hierarchy. For example, Yahweh possesses superior attributes with respect to all Elohim. God's attributes aren't what make him an Elohim, since inferior beings are members of that same group. The Old Testament writers understood that Yahweh was an Elohim, but no other Elohim was Yahweh. That's kind of key. He was species unique among all residents of the spiritual world. That is not to say that an Elohim could not interact with the human world. The Bible makes it clear that the divine being can and did assume a physical human form and even corporeal flesh for interaction with people, but that is not the normal state. Spiritual beings are spirits. In the like manner, humans can be transported to the divine realm, but that is not our normal place of existence. So there's Yahweh, there's the Elohim, they are the divine, some of them are the divine council. They can interact with humans,
Fred,
Sir?
how does that, can you compare the Elohim to Jesus, both God and man? It seems that some might make that comparison. I'm a little bit confused.
Well, Jesus is a member of the divine being called Yahweh, who is one of a kind. Right? So Yahweh is one essence. He has three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Co-equal, same essence, God of God, very God of very God, the creeds all say. So Jesus is that. What Jesus did, according to Paul in Philippians, is he took on what?
Human form.
Human form. He took on human flesh. He did not count it robbery. That's the old King James Version. He said, I will take on humanity that I might offer salvation to humanity, or propitiation. So he took on human nature in conjunction with his divine nature. Now the question is does he now always have that human nature? And some would say no, I think he probably does.
I thought you just
God
said
being in
that.
heaven.
I thought you just said that the Elohim can also take on human form.
They can.
Okay,
But that doesn't mean
so are they? How are they related, or are they not related to
well,
Jesus?
they're related in that Elohim can take on human form. They're not related because Elohim are not Yahweh. So they're
Okay.
similar, but they're not identical.
Okay.
Just like God was creating the world, he had the Elohim there to help guide them and help him create the world. That doesn't mean they are him. He just chose to use them. So yes, Jesus took on human form. Yes, Elohim can take on human form, but that does not mean Jesus is an Elohim and subordinate to Yahweh. No.
Are angels Elohim?
Yes, I think so. And some would say Elohim are only angels, and that may be true, but then what do you do with these four living creatures? They're not called angels, they're not called humans, they're called the four living creatures, and the picture of them looks pretty bizarre.
And that's whether they're good or bad angels, they're all Elohim.
The bad angels, I would assume, are, yes, they are Elohim. And
The Elohim would put anything that's semi-angelic or angelic.
Yes, and in fact, the word would be, now we struggle with this word, divine. Okay, divine. Now we don't like the way you're saying there's a bunch of divines, a bunch of divinities. In one sense, yes. Yahweh is in a class all his own. He's not human. He's supernatural. And he's above and distinct. But then there are other divine beings that are not human, Elohim, and then there are human beings that are human, who are not Elohim and who are not Yahweh. So God, Yahweh, has this divine council and family that were supposed to actually help human beings. That's what Psalm 82 is all about. But they get reprimanded because they were unjust in guiding and leading the nations. So now God has another family called Adam and Eve. And all of this is going to be resolved in Revelation 20, 21, and 22.
Are we all in fact have an angel? A guardian angel?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Some people say we have a guardian angel, some say no.
How about Freddie? What does he say?
I don't know. I need 2 or 3 if I got one. So, Yahweh is the only true and only wise God. Period. He is the Lord. Period. And it's capital L-O-R-D in your Bible, usually. He has created and formed Elohim to function as a divine council to govern mankind.